Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 2-Minute Drill, joined by Matt Schneidman, the Athletic, host of the Tundra podcast on the Greenbay Packers. They fall 16-13 to the Panthers. They always say adding insult to injury. I think the Tucker Kraft injury is probably the biggest story coming out of this game.
Without a doubt. They suffered a back-breaking loss to the Panthers. That's one thing. But the far bigger loss is the loss of Tucker Kraft. You could make a convincing case that outside of Jordan Love, he is their most important player on offense with how much of a mismatch he presents for opposing defenses. He was arguably the best tight end in the NFL entering this week. Entering this week, he was third in receiving yards, tied for second in touchdown catches, first in yards after the catch per reception, and it's looking like it's going to be a torn ACL, a source told our Mike Silver at The Athletic. Matt LaFleur had a very somber tone discussing it. Guys in the locker room weren't thrilled, obviously, about Tucker Kraft's injury either. And now this Packers offense takes on a completely different shape going forward after a game in which they were lifeless pretty much all day long.
Yeah, and it was in the red zone where they just could not get anything going until the final 2 minutes. What's their biggest issue when they get down there?
Well, I think the red zone offense has been a big strength of this team in years past. Today especially, it was not 1 for 5 down there. Savion Williams lost a fumble. It was that. There were some penalties. There was the snap infraction, and then that backed them up out of the red zone, and then a holding and a drop. It's just a whole bunch of things that went wrong for the Packers today. I think beyond the red zone, what is most concerning, if I'm a Packer fan, is they come out lifeless on offense pretty much over the past month and a half in the first half. They're averaging 7.5 points per game in the first half over the last 6 games. Over the last 3 games, they've scored 6, 7, and 6 points in the first half. Matt LaFleur and Jordan Love have to get that fixed.
What do you think the biggest issue is there?
I'm not going to sit here and say that they're not prepared or not ready, but Evan Williams, and he's speaking for the defensive side of the ball, I don't think he's speaking for the offense, said they need to find a way to, bring their own juice. We've heard Matt LaFleur use a different analogy that I'm not allowed, I don't know if I'm allowed to say it on here.
We're on YouTube now, so maybe you could, but we'll go without it.
I don't know if it's the opening script or it's just other teams are giving the Packers different looks than what they see on film, or if they're just not executing. But man, the Packers seem to be digging themselves holes, rather figuratively or literally, in some of these games, and they just don't seem to be playing complete complementary football when they're a team that should be able to and are capable of doing that.
Yeah, you were in the locker room. We saw Colby Wooden leave with a shoulder injury. We saw the same for Matthew Golden. What have you heard? I know it's early. Any concern about them against the Eagles?
Yeah, well, Matt LaFleur's company line, and he wasn't specifically asked about Colby Wooden and Matthew Golden after the game, was there's always concern when a guy leaves the game with an injury and doesn't return. The majority of the talk, injury-wise, was about Kraft after the game, and understandably so, but certainly keeping an eye on Golden and Wooden's injuries will be notable because Matthew Golden is obviously an important piece of the passing game, and now you're losing Tucker Kraft, arguably the most important piece of the passing game. And the run defense has not been great the last 2 weeks. The Packers entered today 3rd in the NFL in rushing yards allowed per game, and Colby Wooden, who's a big part of that, leaves with a shoulder injury. They were not good against the run today, and Rico Dowdle. I think they allowed 4.9 yards per carry on 33 rushes. Guess who comes to town next week? Saquon Barkley.
Yeah, in the locker room leading up to this game, players had said they did not view this as a trap game. It looked like, from my vantage point, they did. Do you think they overlooked the Panthers?
No, I don't think the Packers came into this game saying the Panthers stink. I mean, they're 4-4. This wasn't like the Cleveland Browns, and I'm not saying the Packers viewed that game as a trap game either. I can't sit here at this desk and say the Packers underestimated this team or didn't come out and try hard enough or didn't think the Packers were good. We heard what Micah Parsons said this week, and that was the Panthers are a good team. We need to basically take them seriously. We can't look ahead to the Eagles. Now, naturally, does that sit in a little bit? Maybe. But I can't sit here and say definitively that it does, but certainly the Packers have, quote-unquote, played down to some of their supposedly inferior opponents this season. Yeah,
I think fans are saying, why are they playing with their food, so to say? Is there anything to the fact that they are playing down a little bit to the level of their competition? And you just mentioned it, though. The Panthers aren't a bad team, but I think it's a team when you look at them on the schedule, they're like, Green Bay should beat them.
Yeah, it reminds me of the first year I covered this team in 2019 when the Packers were winning games ugly. And we thought maybe it's a foreshadowing of what's to come. They got blown out by the 49ers in the regular season. I think it was 37-8. And sure enough, in the NFC Championship game that year, the Packers got blown out by the 49ers again. What happened last year? They couldn't beat any good teams, but they beat all the bad teams. And then they lose to one of those good teams in the playoffs. They have a better win this year already than they did all of last season, beating the Lions in Week 1. But aside from the second half against the Steelers, it's been a while since we've seen that complete performance on the field with the Green Bay Packers, and that has to be concerning going forward, even if they are still first place in the division.
Yeah, you mentioned that because they might have to send a thank you card to the Vikings who beat the Lions today. So there is good news. They're still first place in the NFC North, but that division's jumbled. They've only played one game against them. Where do you think this team's outlook now is moving forward at the midway point, especially if they don't have Kraft the rest of the year?
Yeah, I think it's completely different if they don't have Kraft. Like I said, I would even put him above Josh Jacobs maybe in terms of importance to this offense. Him and Jacobs are probably neck and neck, but it's completely different without Kraft. If they just lose to the Panthers and Kraft is healthy, it's okay. It's 5-2-1. They can rebound. The Colts lost today. The Lions lost today. Anything can happen. But the Kraft injury is not a short-term one. His absence completely changes the makeup of this offense. You don't have another tight end like Tucker Kraft. We thought Luke Musgrave was once going to be that. He's not. You still have Jaden Reed out with an injury. We don't know about Golden's injury. Watson's still working his way back into things. He's made a couple nice plays, but this offense has a lot of questions to answer, and they have to answer those questions without one of the best tight ends in football.
The good news is when Luke Musgrave, who they thought was going to probably be their number one tight end, his rookie year went down, that's when Kraft stepped up. Now hopefully they're going to switch that this time around. All right, that's our 2-minute drill. Packers beat writer Matt Schneidman of The Athletic and host of the Tundra podcast.